All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today is October 20th, Tuesday, October 20th, and we're going to start with Committee of the Whole. And I'm going to go ahead and start with our statement. Public notice is hereby given that this meeting will occur electronically without an anchor location in accordance with Utah Code 52-4207 version 4, due to the infectious disease COVID-19 novel coronavirus. The council chair, myself, has determined that conducting a meeting with an anchor location presents substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location because physical distancing measures may be difficult to maintain and in the Murray City Council chambers. Again, for public comment, for public view, you can view the meeting via live stream at www.murraycity.live or murraycitylive.com or via Facebook page. Citizen comments or public hearing comments may be made as follows. Through live through the Zoom meeting process, those wishing to speak during the portions of the meeting must send a request to city.council@murray.utah.gov by 3 p.m. So for future meetings, get your request in by 3 p.m. On meeting days, you will receive a confirmation with an email and instructions and a Zoom link to join the meeting for the future. You can also read into the record by sending an email in advance or during the meeting to city.council@murray.utah.gov. And also, comments are limited to less than 3 minutes. Include your name and contact information. Welcome again, everyone, to our Committee of the Whole. We are going to go ahead and get started with approval of minutes. So if someone wants to make a motion to approve our minutes for September 15th, 2020.
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
Perfect. I got a first and a second. Jennifer?
Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. House?
Aye.
Ms. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Cox?
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez?
Aye. All right, perfect. That is unanimous. We're going to go ahead and move into our discussion items. The first one will be the fiscal year 2020 preliminary financial results, and Brenda Moore will be presenting. Brenda.
Good evening. So I think you all received in your packets a preliminary statement of revenues, expenditures. Just very quickly, I'm going to start with the capital projects and some of the enterprise funds. The capital projects fund ended the year at around, these of course are preliminary and we're subject to audit, so it could change, but ended the year around 14 million. We had projected when we did the budget that it was expected to end the year around 5.2. A lot of the difference in that is projects that were not completed, and that number has now, since those projects have now been rolled into fiscal year 2021, and most of them were probably spent over the course of the summer. And then the library fund has continued to save money for their new library if we ever find a spot to put it in. They're up to $2.6 million in reserves for that. The enterprise funds in general, overall, did very well. Their spending in all major categories were below budget. The revenues were at or above budget, except for power, which was probably just a cool month instead of a hot month last summer. And stormwater was down at 95% of budget for revenue, and I think that was a budgeting problem, and I need to look at that when I do that again next year. The Gulf Fund is slowly decreasing their negative fund balance, and that will continue to decrease as they pay off their loans. The one for the sprinkling system, which has done a wonderful job, if you guys golf, on getting those lawns nice and green with less water. And so the big thing that you guys are always interested in is how did the general fund do? It finished the year, if I had not done an extra transfer, at 33% for the fund balance. Our revenues, the sales tax revenue, which we were predicting was going to tank over the last 3 months of the year, actually came in, for the year, we came in equal to budget, or within a few dollars anyway. So we were up 0.8% over last year. It's a little bit different than the one you have in your packet, which I think says 0.4. I found an error in the homeless shelter deduction. We hadn't been recording that appropriately and have since fixed that. So we finished 1% basically above last year on our sales tax revenue, which is surprising to me and just very, very good news. And the first distribution we got in fiscal year 2021 was also above last year's amount. So that's a good start to the fiscal 21 year. The sales tax option, which is that little 0.2, it was actually down 1%. That is due to the malls and stuff being closed. And so we're not getting a lot of, at least for March and April, we're not getting a lot of people from outside the city purchasing things within Murray. And instead, we were collecting sales tax on only Murray residents that were within the city. So that brick and mortar, people coming inside the city, was probably why that was down a little bit. Because we would collect that on those people. But when they're shopping from West Jordan, people are shopping from home, we don't get our little 0.2 that we would normally get. The good news is the transportation tax came in just slightly above what I had budgeted for the very first year. So Danny has a little bit extra money he can roll into fiscal 21 or 22 projects that is reserved for transportation, roads, and stuff like that. Overall, our revenues came in 3% over our budget, or actually 1% over budget and 3% over last year. So that is about as good as we could have ever imagined when we were sitting back in April trying to create a budget, that fiscal 20 would come in, our revenues would come in that good. Our personnel stayed below budget, and our operations stayed at 80% of budget, which is a testament to people as we were starting the COVID to stop spending except for COVID projects, and they still stayed at only 80% of their operations budget. So overall, we finished the year looking really good. I moved $3,750,000 to capital projects, which at any point can be moved back into the general fund if we ever need it, but it is now sitting in capital projects. That lowers our reserve balance down to 24.9 something percent, or less than 25%. Last year, we only moved $3.5 million. So we did a little better. Some of that is actually due to the CARES money that I allocated backwards. I allocated, of our $2.9 million, I allocated $649,000 back into fiscal year 20. 65,000 of that was to cover supplies and the unemployment expense that we had incurred during March, April, May, and June. And then 583,000 was to offset wages that we, the people were doing things that they normally wouldn't be doing. Fire was spending a lot of time doing COVID prevention stuff. I was doing a lot of COVID time. Parks were cleaning things 3 or 4 times, putting up tape day after day after day on the playgrounds, that kind of stuff. So that is basically how the year ended. It's looking really good. Auditors are coming in tomorrow to do their field work. And yes, they are doing that in person. There's a few things you cannot do over the internet with auditors. They will be in and out as quickly and as efficiently as they can, and then we'll start working via online. So are there any questions about how we kind of finished up last year?
I have a question on the, Diane, maybe you're going to mention this, but on the audit, you say it has started and will go until when?
It has started well, it'll go until we talk in November.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you. So that's when we'll do that. It'll go till November. That's all I want to know. Thanks.
Yeah. He'll physically only be here a couple days, but. Any other questions?
Anyone else? Diane, did you have a question?
How could you tell?
I can. I just could.
No, I just wanted to say I'm really pleased and frankly surprised. I think it's great, and I think the COVID, what was it called?
CARES.
The CARES was really helpful. And anyway, and now you're going to explain that, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you some of the stuff we're going to do or have done with the CARES funding. As soon as I find my paper.
And that's the next item on our agenda is the CARE grants funds. CARES Act grant funds.
Yeah, next item on the agenda, which, how do you lose a piece of paper anyway, okay. So we were allocated a total of $2.9 million in CARES money. I like to round because it's just easier. With the CARES money, we are trying to strike a balance between helping citizens and businesses and meeting the needs of the city. While working through the rules of the grant, I would love to just sit down and pay everybody's delinquent utility bills, but since they won't let me do that, we did send $100,000 to Utah Community Action that they can pay people's utility bills for those people who have been affected by COVID. They will not only pay their Murray bill, they'll pay their Rocky Mountain bill, they'll pay their Dominion Energy bill. So it will help whatever any citizen in Murray. I gave you kind of a chart of how I'm tracking what's going into what categories. If you see labor on there, basically what that means is we've budgeted for all of this labor in our normal budget. People are not working a ton of overtime or anything that's outside the budget. Except for maybe fire. That money is just money the CARES money is going to pay for the labor that we've already budgeted, so we can then use the money that was budgeted for labor on something else. In other words, it's helping our general fund balance. It's a way of helping the city without replacing our income because they are now paying for some of our salaries. Let's see, what other projects? We've got labor. The CARES money's been used to pay our unemployment expense. When this first happened, all of our part-time people were eligible for unemployment, and the unemployment people were paying half of our expense, and we're using the CARES money to pay the other half. We bought a bunch of supplies, stuff like the Zoom, laptops, headsets, anything we needed to work from home, masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, all of that kind of PPE stuff. And we're still, right now, we have outstanding projects. The fire department is retrofitting their older fire stations with touchless faucets, light switches, and stuff like that as one of their projects. And the estimates on the chart I gave you, they're just estimates. I have no idea what they're going to come in at. We're still working on, I don't even think they're working on estimates. They're just working on getting it done, and then we'll have the actual expenses in there. All of the park restrooms in all of the parks are being retrofitted with touchless faucets, which not only save water, but also save the having to touch things. The library is working on putting in, possibly, if they can find a contractor, a books drive-through service. So where their drop-off is for your book returns, they will have a window there and they can hand you your hold pickups. They're also working on what is called a remote locker. So if you have something on hold, need to pick it up after hours, your library card will get you into that vestibule, and then there will be, I'm imagining something that looks nicer than a gym locker, but there will be a locker there, your library card will open and you can grab your stuff. That will actually expand their hours of availability, so people who can't get there by 6 can pick it up at any time they want. And they're as part of that, they're going to have a counter system that will count the number of people going in and out of the library automatically and kind of track them based on 3D imaging where they may go, just to get a better idea of how people are using the library. We are sending a mailer to all residential addresses to inform them about rental assistance. And kind of as a caveat in there, there is also a little link or a description of where you can get mortgage assistance. You will know that's gone out when it arrives at your house, because there's no way for me to tell who needs assistance and who doesn't. So we're just sending them, trying to hit every major, every address in the city that we have in our utility system.
Brenda, will that come through like a letter or a postcard?
It's a letter.
Will it be with our bill or?
No, it's a totally separate mailer. We determined that at least that way we can send it to a few more people, and it was trying to just get it out and not get it stuffed with because if you're like me, you see your utility bill is there, you just go pay it. I don't even look at it, open the envelope.
Well, that was my concern. That's why I asked.
Yeah, it's a separate letter. So since it's going to look different than a utility bill, they may open it. That's our hope.
I'll let you know when we receive it.
Okay. The other thing we're doing is we are retrofitting some of our city buildings with touchless faucets, light switches. Not doing a whole lot in this building. If you have been in the building, you have noticed we now have touchless hand paper towel dispensers. Those were actually purchased before COVID. We just finally got around to installing them. And then the big one that you may have heard of yesterday is we are doing a Murray Small Business Grant Program, which we've allocated $700,000 towards, hoping to help about 140 businesses with up to $5,000 to help them with marketing, advertising, promotions, other types of expenses. I think that opened yesterday. As of this morning when we were talking, there was 20 applications in and 2 had already been approved. So we're working on that, hoping to help some of our smaller businesses get stay in business. And
I have a question about businesses, since it's kind of here. What if businesses can't pay their utility bills? Would that fall into the small business loan, or could they call CAP? Or
I think there's some
if they're struggling. I mean, I'm sure everybody's struggling, not just residents.
Right. I think they could have used any of their other CARES money that they may have gotten, because the county had a program out there, and the county and ours are for different things. So they should be able to get both. I don't know what's out there to help businesses pay utility bills. I would love to help them do that, but I can't.
Question. Does Melinda know? You're nodding your head, Melinda, so I was wondering if you knew.
Yeah, the county was able to provide some grant assistance that could be used towards those types of expenses, but the CARES Act specifically prohibits us from replacing our own revenue. So when businesses called and said, you know, I can't pay my business renewal license, that's not something that we could use the CARES Act funding for. But the funding that they would have received from the county, as long as it wasn't the paycheck protection, could be used for those types of expenses. So between the county and the state, there were several different opportunities for businesses, everything from commercial rent assistance to even a retail shop program where 50% of, if a business offers a discount up to 50%, there's a program through GOA, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, that could replace that revenue. So essentially, a business or the CARES Act funding is paying for that discount. The consumer isn't paying for the discount, and neither the store is not losing money either. So there were some opportunities, but specific to the program that we're using, it'll be restricted to marketing and promotion efforts for a business, signage, logos, that, you know, ads in a local magazine or paper, or social media ads, print materials, and those types of things.
Thank you for that clarification, Melinda. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Brenda.
Yeah, it's her program, so I'm just kind of the messenger and the tracker of the costs. So that's the big one. And then anything that is left over when we come down to December, there is a term in the CARES Act, what you can do with it, that says there is a presumption that any of your fire and police salaries since March are COVID-related expenses. And there was a bunch of talk back and forth between different federal agencies, the one that's going to audit these things and the one that's put it together, and the county. And it's finally boiled down to they won't even ask. They're going to ask, how much is your budget for police and fire? How much was your CARES that you're allocating to that? And as long as it's lower or the same, your CARES money is good. We don't have to prove to them that our police and fire were actually working on CARES stuff. They can be doing their normal everyday job, which I did do a little study before this all came down, and it was determined that the police department's probably spending about 40 minutes a day cleaning and taking precautions, and the fire department, depending on the number of calls, it can be about 20% of their shift time. So that's what that kind of column that I already have in there that says fire, police, COVID precaution estimate. That was a way to use some of the CARES money in a scientific way or a calculated way, as opposed to just saying 100% of their salaries. But right now, I'm comfortable with, at the end of this, if we haven't spent if we've only spent 2.7 of the 2.9, we say the rest of it is a presumption of public safety costs, and we're not sending anything back to the county.
Anyone have any questions? No? Kat? No? Okay, I wasn't sure. All right, the one last question I do have is, can we use the CARES Act for anything in the arts, whether it be to help upgrade or do things within the Murray Theater, or, you know, the loss of revenue that we had with some of the plays? Any of that? Because I got contacted by UEA about this.
So
Utah Arts Program, and They said
Right.
we could. So I just want to know how we could.
We can't replace revenue with our CARES money. Now, the arts has received a total of $19,000 in CARES money. Some of it came through the Utah Humanities for the museum. So that is paid for our part-timer to come back, even though our museum was closed, and it's paying for some people that are cataloging and doing some other stuff. She being Lori, has gotten some other grants in order to put on some performances and that kind of stuff. But the money that I have cannot be used to replace their income. If they're using extra people for staff when they're doing their stuff, we can allocate some of those costs to it, because if we have to have 15 ushers instead of 10 because somebody is doing nothing but counting how many people, and if they're far enough apart, we can use some of that. But overall, I don't, we aren't really doing anything with the art. She's got enough money with that 15,000 that I'm wondering where she's going to spend it, but she's going to spend it. She told me she will. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. All right. Anyone else? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Item number 3 on our agenda is small modular reactor carbon-free power project discussion. Lane, take it away. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure, keep you on suspense there.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yes. You have 15 minutes.
I know. Can you go like this when it gets close?
I'm just going to let you keep going.
I'm gonna barter GL for 5 minutes. How's that? No.
Go ahead.
Well, Council, I want to thank you again for talking about SMRs, small modular reactors. We started talking about this about 8 or 9 years ago when UAMPS first brought the SMR ideas to us. But just in the last 18 months, maybe 2 years, it's really hit fast and furious where we've had to make some decisions that have been pretty weighty. I hope you had the chance, you did, because you just approved the September 15th Committee of the Whole minutes, but those minutes were very well done. And if you were to follow those minutes, you're really going to understand the whole situation of what we're talking about here. So kudos to Jen Lopez and her staff for those minutes, because as I prepared my comments here, I refer to those minutes often. So that's kind of the same platform I'm going to use tonight. I want to talk a little about why we need to look at a new resource and the pros and the cons as I see it in the project. And then last of all, I want to talk about some of the other options we have in case we don't do this nuclear project. We do have other options on the table. And hopefully this will give you an idea going into the meeting in about half hour here of some direction we can go. I'll stop occasionally for some questions, but I think it's going to be hopefully somewhat of a review, but not much has changed since we met September 15th in the Committee of the Whole, except for we did receive the DOE money. This is the Department of Energy, $1.4 billion that they had appropriated to us, but hadn't quite delivered to us. And that's why we moved the meeting from September to October. Now, nuclear in itself is controversial. I know it is. And I know when I brought it up as an option years ago, that it would face dissection and would have a lot of public comment. But I wanted the mayor and you, the council, to weigh in on this alternative option. Now, this is just one of the options that the power department is bringing to you as an option that we can use to fill our resource gap here in the next decade or so. No matter which way it goes, the vote tonight, we're kind of formulating a plan for me and Greg and my staff to follow as far as who or where we go to get some demand or where we go to get some power plants. We're here because we have a potential plant dismantling, I guess you could say, sometime in the next 2 decades. The Hunter Power Plant is 35 years old. It's a coal plant out by Price, Utah, and it has received a good clean bill of health to go another 10 or 15 years. But the writing's on the wall for that plant that probably by 2030 or maybe 2035 at the latest, that plant will be demolished or dismantled. And we've got to come up with 20 megawatts. That's our biggest resource right now. And somehow we need to come up with it, whether it be nuclear or other options. We need to fill that gap somehow. So with that, we're going to lose some resource, the Murray is, but also the Western grid's going to lose some resource. It's projected that 3,000 megawatts of power or plant power will be lost in the next decade in the Western grid. That's in the Western states. These could be coal plants that are being turned down. It could be environmental issues, shutting plants down. It could be political issues. But 3,000 megawatts is quite a bit. And not only is Murray going to be in a bind to replace plants, but the entire Western grid is too. And the SMR could be something. The small modular reactor could be one of those plants. I'm not telling you that's the one. And with that 3,000 megawatt deficit that we're going to see in the next 2 months or next 10 years, there's only 2 plants that I know of right now that are being built or being designed in the Western grid. One is this SMR plant. It's in Idaho. And the other plant is the one out by Delta, Utah. The coal plant that's being refueled to natural gas and to hydrogen. Coincidentally, Murray's part of both those plants. And so I think we are looking forward and looking for forethought on where we're going to come up with some of those plant ideas.
Blaine, really quick, with the plant in Colville, how much do we participate with? How many megawatts do we currently participate, or will we be participating in the future?
The one in Idaho or the one in Delta? The one in
Delta.
Delta. We are 4% of that plant. It is run and operated by Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. So 4%, to put that into perspective, we will have about 39 megawatts of capacity when the new plant is built. And that's quite a bit. I know megawatt might be quite, it's a new term to many of us, megawatts and kilowatts and all that type of stuff. That is about 39 megawatts is Murray's load in the wintertime. We could do that all with one plant. So it's a big chunk of power that we could use on a seasonal callback.
What happened? Well, here's my other question. Since it's in transition, what happens in that transition? Where do we get our power? Is that where we find other resources until they come up to speed with the new technology there? Right now, the IPP plant, or the one out in Delta, is not being used by Murray. It's a plant that we can call on if we need to in a bind. It's a little bit more expensive resource, and we need to give them a little notice on when we call that back. It's a good question. To answer your question is they're going to run the coal plant side by side with the other plant for a little while to make sure that the natural gas plant works. And so there'll be 2 plants working in parallel. So that'll be in the 2025 timeframe. So, but that is a good option. We're going to talk about that, if not in this committee of the whole meeting. I want to talk about that in the city council meeting, because the IPP is a good option that we could fall back on if we decide not to do the nuclear. So I want to let me check the time. I want to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages, but I want to stop just for a second. Resolve raised a few questions. Does anybody else have any questions before I talk about some of the reasons why I think we should stay in the project? And then I will follow up with some of the reasons why I'm concerned about the project. There's any questions right now? You did mention that anybody else have questions? You mentioned that the DOE, we have the DOE funding. Is that like in transfer to UAMPS now? How is that? Okay. Okay, great. I was just going to talk about that. Touch on that. Okay. One of the good reasons why I think we should stay in the project is that we did receive Department of Energy grant fund money. It was just received last Friday. It's $1.355 billion. It's an appropriation that's giving to UAMPS carbon-free power project as a quote. I got to read the quote. It is to serve as a funding vehicle to advance the CFPP as Congress appropriates. In other words, they want to see, the Department of Energy wants to see small
reactors, small nuclear reactors built, whether it be this design we're talking about, or there's other designs out there that other people are coming up with. And DOE is giving out money, you might say. They're giving out money. They will give $1.355 billion to the UAMPS group to put towards the purchase of this plant or the construction of the plant. It's over a 10-year period. They will appropriate every year for 10 years. A little bit here, a little bit there. Now, most of the money, 1.1 billion of the 1.4 billion, will be distributed to UAMPS the first 3 years. And then the remaining 7 years of that 10-year grant period, the other $300 million will be distributed. So it's a grant that's going to be appropriated every year. That's a big positive that the DOE is coming up with about 1/4 the cost of the plant. The plant will cost $6 billion, and they just gave us $1.4 billion. So that's a huge advantage. Without that DOE grant, the UAMPS would not be involved. And that's why we needed to wait till October to see if the money came in, and it did. Now, we don't know if the DOE money is going to dry up after this. I mean, somebody else might come and say, we want to build plant number 2 and plant number 3 and 4, or whatever the case may be. We're not sure DOE is going to come up with any more money. Chances are they will. There was another grant that was given last week to a firm back in Michigan, I think, also for a small reactor. And they've received money. So DOE's out there giving out money. So that's my first advantage why we should stay in the project, is we need to take advantage of the DOE money if that's the case.
My next question to that, a follow-up. Let's say November 3rd happens, we have a new elected president. Could the DOE change their mind on the money that they give us?
Yes, they could. And to answer that question, this process actually started when Obama was in the White House, and he started the process. The DOE appropriations has had support on both sides of the aisle to this point. But you're exactly right. That's a disadvantage I'm going to bring up here in just a minute, is the annual appropriations. One is we got the money, but then we have to wait for it every year, and that's kind of worrisome. It's kind of, you don't know what Congress is going to do. We're given every signal that they will continue to pay out the money, but you're exactly right. With a whim, the DOE could change their money, their timing on that. We think this first go around is going to go. If we get past the first 3 or 4 years on appropriations, we're home free. But good question, very good question. The second good reason why I think we should stay in the project is that we do have off-ramp capabilities. I mean, this is a project different than another project where you've got to come up with money and then you just kind of sit back and wait to see people spend it. We do have off-ramps. The first one, of course, or the next one, of course, is October 31st. And I think you, Council, know the latitude and the gravity of what the vote's going to be later tonight, if we stay in this project or not. Now, it's not the end of the world if we don't do this project. Don't get me wrong. But it's just one of the projects we're looking at. We have an off-ramp. Let me review how this is working so far. So far, we've spent $330,000 up to this point. And now the UAMPS is out of money, you might say. They need to go to the next budget phase to continue the process with the licensing of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So they've come back and asked for more money, as well as the other partners of Anti-DIN. What we're asking for, if you pass the resolution, is that the next commitment will be a commitment of $1.1 million to $1.4 million. And there's a range there, and I'll explain why, but that range will get us to an off-ramp in January of 2022. And then there's another off-ramp, April of 2023. So we have 2 more off-ramps that Murray could escape from, you might say, if we feel uncomfortable with the project. $330,000 is spent. That's money that's going to go one way or the other. They're asking for another 1.1 to 1.4 million. And then that final phase of to get us to the next escape route, exit ramp, would be $700,000. So a total of $2.1 million to get us to the construction bonding phase. Now, I gave you a range of 1.1 million to 1.4 million, and we don't know exactly what the next phase is going to be a commitment, because Right now, we've got other councils like you that are deciding this week whether they're going to stay in the project or not. Logan, Lehigh, and Kaysville have already opted to get out of the project. There's other cities that I know of, well, there's actually close to 30 cities in Utah that are going through the same process you are. But the bigger cities, the ones that kind of have the bigger resource load, are also meeting this week. It would be great if we could meet at midnight on October 31st to make this vote, because I could tell you exactly how much money they're asking for. But let's say Bountiful drops out, then their commitment of money is going to go to the other participants to spend. Let's say Parowan drops out, or Paraguna. I mean, they're smaller, but every time a city drops out and jumps out of the project, then their portion of the next entitlement is going to be spread out over the remaining participants. So if some of the big players, like I've heard rumor of, that might drop out, that'll put a little bit more of a commitment on Murray. So that's why it's a 1.1 million to 1.4 million. It could swing quite a ways away. Any questions on that?
So that's in addition. In the last committee of the whole, you said it would be 1.7 million.
Yeah, 1.7 was both exit ramps together.
Okay.
So yeah.
So that's in addition to the $300,000. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Around 2.1 million total.
Okay. Brett, go ahead.
So if the subscriptions or whatever you want to call them keep dropping, and the cost keeps going up, does UAMPS finally say we can't do this anymore? And then there's a cost more than the 330,000 that we're into.
Yeah, that's a vote that will be taken next week on November 2nd. After they find out which cities have dropped out on October 31st, we're going to meet on November 2nd. If there's enough people that have dropped out, as a UAMPS committee vote, we will say, let's just drop it and move on. And if we lose our 330, we'll lose the money. And everybody else that's put money out there, I think Logan's into it $700,000 that we're walking away from. So to answer your question, Brad, November 2nd is the date UAMPS will decide whether to move on. And I think UAMPS will move on, whether it be with Murray and Heber and Bountiful, I don't know. But I think that they will move on. It's kind of hard to turn.
You think they'll move on with it, you're saying?
With the project, without us. Yeah. I've just got a couple more minutes. I won't have time to go through all my advantages and disadvantages. But the big disadvantage I wanted to bring up, and hopefully I can maybe rehearse this a little bit better in council meeting when I have a little more time. Is that okay, Rosalba?
Yes, of course.
The big concern I have is the subscription. We only have the plant 25% subscribed, meaning we have a 720 megawatt plant and only 180 megawatts are signed up for. We still have 550 megawatts that are out there that we can't find anybody to come sign for. And that's a concern. I think it's a weakness in the project, is that we're building a plant right now with the hope that people will come and sign up. Now, we're told that once we get the Nuclear Regulatory Commission license in 2023, and people out there that are watching this project, and they are watching the project, they will see, hey, they have a license. They've got bulldozers up in Idaho right now. They're moving ground. They're actually going to build this plant. Let's go sign up for it. And that's what the hope is that they will sign up for it. It's a worrisome issue to me, though, that we don't have it subscribed. And if that's the issue that puts the bad taste in everybody's mouth, I can totally understand, to go on with a plant that's kind of iffy as far as subscription is kind of tough. The project cost has also increased to $6 billion. It was around $4.5 billion a couple years ago, and the cost of the plant's gone up. So we have to be concerned about that. And this is my last comment, and I'll turn it back to you. But I'll mention, even though the cost of the plant's up to $6 billion, we are guaranteed, or we were told, that our cost of power would be $55 a megawatt hour. And that's the key point. No matter what the cost of that plant is, they're going to cut costs to the point where we can get a product for $55. I'll fill in the blanks in council meeting, but I just wanted to get your feel for it. We do have other options. In fact, I've got 10 other options we have that I will denote in council meeting of places we can go to either subscribe to more power or build more power plants or call back the Delta plant like Rosalba mentioned. that is an option we can do. And we kind of know what the costs are going to be on that. They're going to be more than this plan, but I wanted to give the council options with what we can do rather than just throw the problem at you and say, tell me what to do. I'll go over the pros and the cons the next hour, and then I'll go through I'll get my crystal ball out there, I guess you could say, and say, well, this is an option, this is an option, this is an option. So, and then my recommendation in a nutshell, and I'll let you chew on this a little bit, because I want to set it up a little bit before I recommend, but my recommendation would be that we drop out of the project. I think there's just enough stumbling blocks out there that I'm really concerned about it. And in council meeting, I think I want to look at that a little bit deeper. But if you're looking for a recommendation, I think that's the way I would go. Maybe surprising to some of you, but I just feel like there's enough with that subscription problem and people not signing up. The costs are going up already, and we haven't.
Can I mention something real quick, girls? All is that okay?
I guess, Brett. Just kidding. Yes, of course.
All I want to say, we'll ask more questions, I'm sure, in the council meeting, but thanks a lot. I really appreciate your honesty there. I mean, really, that's huge for me. And I've been sweating bricks, and I think we all have. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate your directness on that. Thank you. Well,
you know better than any of us. So
it's taken 9 years of hard work, and I'm not saying I have the answer. I really don't. That's my gut feel. And let the chips fall where they may. But with that said, if the council decides to go with it, I will go wholeheartedly and push this project, and maybe at a decreased level. And that's one of the options that we have on one of those resolutions was we can decrease the level. So we're not putting out $2 million, we're putting out $500,000. And that's not as worrisome as $2 million. So we can talk more.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Blaine.
Okay.
Anyone else have any last comments before we move on? All right. Well, thank you. We are going to move on to item number 4 on our agenda, to interlocal agreement with out-of-state public agency. GL?
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Thank you. This is a resolution that would allow the city to enter into an agreement with the Houston-Galveston Area Council, which is a political subdivision of Texas, to take advantage of procurement processes and to purchase an item at a discount. The fire department is looking to purchase another apparatus, and they want to buy it from Pierce. They have an apparatus from Pierce already. And this is the way this has been set up to purchase these things, is through these purchasing programs. So this would allow the city to, the fire department to obtain another, I think it's a pumper, another apparatus. The agreement you have in front of you is the interlocal contract with this entity. And if you approve it, if you agree and approve this, and the fire department can move forward. Just so you know, they can purchase this through this group at about $26,000 less. And they're trying to get this done this year because they believe that next year it would go up about 5%. So that'd be a savings of over $60,000 if you approve this tonight. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I'm excited. Anyone else? All right, GL. Thank you so much for that. All right. Lastly, Jan, do we have any announcements?
I was just going to mention quickly that the Haunted Woods will be taking place next week, the 26th through the 28th. It will still be in Murray Park, 6 to 8 p.m. They are asking that you go online to www.hauntedwoodsmurray.com to register in advance. And that is sponsored by the Exchange Club, and their revenue from that goes to help those people who have suffered from abuse. So I'd encourage you to get involved in that. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you. We have about 10 minutes before 9 minutes or so to come back on for our council meeting at 6:30. And so we are adjourned from the Committee of the Whole. Thank you, everyone.